This week, Ducati hosted their world premiere event and launched a whole raft of bikes for 2020, including an updated Panigale V4, the Panigale V2, a 1260 Multistrada Grand Tour, and a Scrambler Icon Dark, to name but a few. But possibly the most eagerly anticipated is the Streetfighter V4, along with its premium spec sibling, the Streetfighter V4S. So in today's video, we're going to go over the specs, look at the difference between the two models, and also see how they compare to their competition, namely the Kawasaki ZH2 that was also launched this week at the Tokyo Motor Show. So let's start with the Streetfighter V4, although almost all of the photography provided by Ducati is of the V4S, so you'll have to excuse me if I use them to illustrate my point. Essentially, the Streetfighter is the Panigale V4 with flat bars and the fairing removed, but the specs are impressive all the same, so we'll run through all of them from start to finish. It, of course, uses the same 1100cc Desmo Sedici Stradale V4 motor as the Panigale V4, and Ducati describe it as practically unchanged. That's interesting because the Kawasaki ZH2 uses a motor that has more in common with the sports touring H2SX than the Superbike H2, which gives it less top-end power but a bit more mid-range grunt. It should make for a more usable road bike if sacrificing some ability on the track, but Ducati have decided to stick with the entirely aggressive motor of the Panigale, producing a whopping 208 horsepower at 12,750 revs and 123 Nm of peak torque at 11,500 revs. They have, however, shortened the final drive ratio, which means 10% more torque at the wheel whilst presumably reducing the bike's top speed. This should make for a ridiculously quick bike off the line and help it compete with the ZH2's mid-range grunt. The motor inherits much of its design from Ducati's MotoGP V4 Desmo Sedici engine, including a counter-rotating crankshaft which can help to reduce the gyroscopic effect of the wheels, making it more nimble whilst also helping to keep the front end down under acceleration and the rear wheel down under braking. The engine also accounts for a good share of the frame, with the Streetfighter V4 using Ducati's front frame design. Essentially, this means that the motor forms the structural middle of the bike, to which a front frame is bolted and holds the head tube and forks. The swing arm attaches to the crankcase, whilst the trellis subframe attaches to both the front frame and the motor. In practice, this all means that the bike can be more compact, stiffer and lighter than more conventional frame designs. On top of the front frame is a 16-litre aluminium fuel tank which extends under the seat. Personally, I love the bare aluminium finish on the tank of the Panigale V4R, so hopefully there'll be a Streetfighter V4R along at some point as well. Suspension on the Streetfighter V4 comes in the form of fully adjustable 43mm Showa big piston forks with a Sachs steering damper on hand. Sachs also provide a fully adjustable monoshock at the rear. Brakes are from Brembo, of course, with a pair of radially mounted monoblock Stylema 4-piston calipers on 330mm discs, and there's a 2-pot Brembo on a 245mm disc at the rear. Tyres are supplied by Pirelli in the form of their Diablo Rosso Corsa 2s, with a substantial 200mm width at the rear, mounted on 5-spoke cast aluminium wheels. Although there's less bodywork to speak of than the Panigale, the Streetfighter finds itself with Aero Winglets which have trickled down to the entire 2020 V4 range from the V4R. The Streetfighter, however, gets 4 of them, 2 on either side in what Ducati is calling a biplane design. It really depends on what sort of riding you do as to whether you'll think these winglets are a valuable addition or just a status symbol or marketing tool, but Ducati's press release quotes 28 kilograms of extra downforce, with 20 on the front tyre and 8 at the rear, produced at 270 kilometers per hour, which is about 168 miles per hour. Presumably the effect diminishes quite significantly at road speeds, otherwise they'd be quoted too, but I guess they might appeal to anyone brave enough to track day a £17,500 motorcycle. The Streetfighter V4 has what looks on paper like an incredible electronics package, the bulk of which is driven by a 6-axis IMU, or inertial measurement unit for those of you not familiar, which constantly monitors the bike's roll, yaw and pitch angles. This data and the ride-by-wire throttle are combined to enable a whole bunch of rider aids, including cornering ABS, lean-sensitive traction control, slide control, wheelie control, power launch or launch control as it's more commonly known, engine braking control, and the bike has an up and down quick shifter which also uses the lean data to, as Ducati puts it, maximize bike stability while shifting gears through the bends. There are 3 riding modes which change the parameters I've just mentioned. There's race, sport, and street, which limits power to 155 horsepower, and it's all managed through a 5-inch TFT screen. A lap timer and data analyzer are available as accessories, whilst Ducati's multimedia system comes as standard and allows the rider to connect their phone to manage calls, music, and messages from the dash. The front end defines the look of this bike with an LED daytime running light that Ducati claims was influenced by the grin of the Joker. It's a beautiful, aggressive looking machine, and I think we can all agree that it's no shame that it only comes in one colour, red. The Streetfighter V4 will cost £17,595 in the UK, whilst the premium Streetfighter V4S will be £19,795. So what do you get for your extra £2,200? The biggest upgrade is to the suspension, where the Showa forks are replaced with Öhlins NIX30s and the Sachs monoshock with an Öhlins TTX36. Both the fork and shock are electronically adjusted by the Öhlins Smart EC 2.0 control system, which can either be used in a fixed mode, which allows the rider to dial in their own settings, or a dynamic mode that makes use of the 6-axis IMU to constantly adjust compression and rebound damping based on the detected riding style. The Sachs steering damper of the Streetfighter V4 is also swapped out for an Öhlins unit on the V4S, which also makes use of the Smart EC control system. The V4S also comes with upgraded wheels in the form of Marcassini's 3-spoke forged aluminium wheels, as opposed to the 5-spoked cast aluminiums on the standard bike. This might go some way to explain the weight difference between the two models. The V4 has a claimed curb weight of 201 kilograms, whereas the V4S is a couple lighter at 199. Both bikes have the option of a full Akrapovic exhaust system, which boosts power up to 220 horsepower and peak torque to 130 Newton meters, whilst also shedding 6 kilograms. So that ought to spice things up a little should you think the Streetfighter needs it. All in all, the specs look pretty epic, but how do they compare to the supercharged Kawasaki ZH2, which was also launched this week? The Streetfighter definitely looks more premium, with a bit more power, better equipment, and a more comprehensive electronics package, especially the V4S. But with the Ducati prices at 17.5 grand and almost 20 grand for the S, they're most likely going to be a good amount more expensive than the Kawasaki. Although its price hasn't been announced yet, it's likely to come in around the 13 or 14,000 mark, which is not an insignificant difference. Perhaps that's a more accessible price point for a lot of riders, and as a result you might see more of them on the road. But on the other hand, if it's closer to the 14 mark, buyers might be tempted to splash out the extra 3,500 on the Streetfighter, especially if they finance it and therefore notice the difference a bit less on a monthly basis. But then there's the updated KTM Super Ducar, which is also due to be announced soon and will be another player in the hyper naked category. It'll make its first appearance at EICMA in a couple of weeks time, and I'll be there to cover it, so hit subscribe if you want to see all of the new bikes from the show in Milan. And let me know what you think of the Streetfighter V4 and V4S in the comments below. I've already published a video about the ZH2, and there were a few comments on that saying that it was a Streetfighter V4 killer, but I'm kind of leaning towards the Ducati. Yes, it's more expensive, but the looks are incredible and the specs are unreal. Let me know which you'd pick in the comments below, and if you're new here, hit subscribe and I'll catch you in the next video.